The massive council chamber floated in the empty space between two dying stars. Inside the crystal dome, hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy gathered around the curved tables. The air shimmered with different breathing gases that each species needed to survive. Some creatures looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others moved like liquid metal in fancy containers. A few resembled walking trees with glowing fruits hanging from their branches. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the room. His blue skin sparkled like diamonds, and his forearms moved in smooth patterns as he spoke. The Valerian Empire had sent him to share news about a small planet they had discovered in the outer regions of the galaxy. Fellow council members, Zethkar began, his voice ringing like silver bells. Today, I bring you information about a world that barely deserves our attention. It sits in the third orbit around a simple yellow star. The local beings call their planet Earth. A hologram appeared above his head, showed a blue and green ball spinning slowly in the darkness. White clouds swirled around brown and green, land masses. It looked peaceful and pretty from far away. Commander Vextel of the Krillian Defense Corps let out a harsh laugh. His metal body clanked as he shifted in his floating chair. What could such a primitive rock possibly offer us? Their technology readings show they still burn fossil fuels for energy. The hologram changed to show images of human cities. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Cars moved along straight roads. Ships crossed vast oceans. To the aliens in the room, it all looked very simple and crude. Look at their construction methods, said High Counselor Mirandi. Her voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. The ethereal collective had built cities that existed in 7 dimensions at once. To her, human buildings looked like toy blocks stacked by children. Zethkar waved one of his hands and new images appeared. Humans in different settings filled the air above the council. Some wore business suits and sat in offices. Others worked in factories with heavy machines. Few ran races on tracks or played games with balls. These creatures call themselves humans, Zethkar explained. They have only 2 arms and 2 legs, so they breathe a simple mixture of gases. Most interesting, they seem to fight each other constantly over the smallest things. Resources, invisible lines they draw on maps, even different ways of thinking. About the same, invisible sky gods. The council members found this very funny. Across the galaxy, most intelligent species had learned to work together millions of years ago. War between members of the same species was seen as a sign of very low intelligence. General Desorthak of the Dominion fleet stood up on his 6 legs. His shell was covered in battle scars from wars fought across countless worlds. Perhaps we should be grateful that they fight each other. Saves us the trouble of dealing with a united enemy. Enemy, Zethkar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. General, I think you give them too much credit. Watch this. The hologram showed human weapons being tested. Missiles flew through the air and exploded against targets. Tanks fired shells that knocked down walls. Soldiers ran across fields carrying rifles that shot small metal bullets. Chemical explosives, Zethkar said with obvious scorn. Kinetic projectiles. Their most powerful weapons split atoms, but even those are crude compared to our plasma cannons. From 1,000 years ago, they would need at least 10,000 years to develop technology that could even scratch our shields. Subcommander Taloth of the Science Division studied the images with her large, insect-like eyes. What about their space capabilities? Surely they have at least achieved faster-than-light travel. The hologram changed again. This time it showed human rockets blasting off from Earth. The primitive machines climbed slowly into the sky, burning chemical fuel and leaving trails of smoke behind them. They have barely left their own planet, Zethkar reported. A few trips to their small moon, some robotic probes sent to nearby worlds. They still use radio waves to communicate across space. Radio waves, like something from the Stone Age. More. Laughter filled the chamber. The idea that any species in the current era would still use radio seemed absurd. Most civilizations had moved beyond such basic technology before they even developed art or music. Show us their military structure, requested Admiral Xiphos of the Hegemony Warfleet. His species had conquered 47 star systems, and he was always interested in studying potential. Targets Zethkar displayed images of human armies. Soldiers marched in formation carrying weapons. Ships sailed across oceans with large guns mounted on their decks. Aircraft flew overhead, dropping bombs on practice targets. They organize into small tribal groups they call nations, Zethkar. Explained, these nations fight each other regularly. They have wars that last for years over tiny pieces of land. Some of their conflicts have killed millions of their own kind. Millions? Admiral Ziffo seemed shocked. They actually kill millions of their own species in these local disputes. Indeed, and they seem proud of it. They build monuments to remember their wars. They tell stories about their greatest battles. They even teach their children about famous military leaders from the past. The council members exchanged looks of disgust and amazement. Most civilized species had moved beyond war within their own kind before they even developed spaceflight. The idea of celebrating violence seemed primitive. Beyond belief, High Counselor Mirandi leaned forward in her energy chair. Perhaps there is some entertainment value in observing such barbaric behavior. It's like watching animals fight in their natural habitat. My thoughts exactly, Zethkar agreed. I recommend we send a single observation ship to monitor them. Primitive sensors would never detect our presence. We could study their warlike behavior for research purposes. Commander Vextel made a sound like grinding metal. One ship seems like too much effort for such worthless creatures. Why not just claim their system now and be done with it? Their entire military could not stop a single one of our destroyers. The suggestion was met with general agreement. Several council members voiced support for a quick conquest. The humans could be useful as basic laborers. Their planet had water and other resources that could be harvested. Wait, said Science Advisor Keekthul of the Research Collective. His three heads turned to look at different parts of the hologram. I noticed something unusual about their world. What? Do you mean? Asked Zethkar. Look at the size of their moon. See how close it orbits to their planet.
Oh, that would create massive tidal forces.
And notice the tilt of their world's axis. The climate changes would be extreme. The hologram zoomed in to show Earth's surface in more detail. Vast deserts stretched across continents. Frozen wastelands covered the northern and southern regions. Mountain ranges rose like knife edges from the ground. Deep oceans covered most of the surface, hiding who knew what dangers in their depths. Their weather patterns are quite violent, Keekthul continued. Massive storms that span entire continents, tornadoes that can destroy their buildings, hurricanes that flood their coastal areas. And look at this geological activity. The display showed volcanoes erupting with massive explosions. Earthquakes split the ground open. Tidal waves crashed against shores, washing away everything in their path. Fascinating, said General Korthak. Their planet is actively trying to kill them. How do they survive in such conditions? Zethkar waved dismissively. They huddle in their crude shelters and hope for the best. What else could such primitive beings do? Far across the galaxy, on the edge of the solar system that held Earth, long-range sensors aboard the human deep space vessel, Intrepid, detected unusual energy signatures. Captain John Hayes stood on the bridge, studying the readings with growing concern. How long have they been out there? He asked his science officer. At least 3 months, sir, replied Dr. Alex Carter. Maybe longer. The signatures suggest multiple vessels using technology we've never seen before. Are they trying to hide from us? No, sir. Based on the energy output, I don't think they care if we detect them. They're not even using basic stealth measures. Felt a cold chill run down his spine. If any species advanced enough to travel between stars would certainly know how to hide their ships if they wanted to. The fact that they weren't hiding meant they either didn't see humans as a threat, or they wanted to be noticed. Neither option was reassuring. 3 weeks passed since the Galactic Council meeting. In that time, the Valerian Empire had decided to send one of their finest warships to investigate the human homeworld. They chose the Stellar Dominance, a massive vessel that stretched over 2 miles from end to end. Its crystal hull gleamed like polished jewels in the starlight. Captain Korthoval commanded the ship with the casual confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. His blue skin showed the deeper patterns that marked him as nobility among his people. 4 arms moved gracefully as he gave orders to his crew of 300 Valerians. The ship dropped out of hyperspace. near Earth's moon with barely a ripple in spacetime. Their advanced engines made no sound and left no trace that primitive sensors could detect. At least, that was what Korthovel believed. "Status report," he commanded from his crystal throne on the bridge. Navigation Officer Yextel consulted her. "Displays? We are positioned exactly where the Council requested, Captain. 1 lunar distance from the target world. All stealth systems are active." "Excellent. I'll begin detailed scans of their planetary defenses. I want to know everything about their military capabilities." The stellar dominance turned its powerful sensors toward Earth. What they found seemed to confirm every assumption the Galactic Council had made about human technology. Primitive metal satellites orbited the planet in simple patterns. Radio signals bounced back and forth between the surface and these crude devices. "Their orbital installations are laughably weak," reported Tactical Officer Zechtel. "Simple metal constructions with no energy shields. Their most powerful weapons appear to be kinetic missiles with chemical explosive warheads." Korthovel examined the tactical display with amusement. He could see space stations that looked like children's toys compared to Valerian engineering. The International Space Station spun slowly in its orbit, completely unaware that alien eyes were studying every bolt and panel. "What about their surface defenses?" he asked. "Even more primitive, Captain." "Ground-based radar systems that operate on electromagnetic frequencies we stopped using 10,000 years ago. Their interceptor aircraft use chemical combustion engines. Their missile silos contain weapons that could not penetrate our weakest shields." The captain laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The Council was right to send only 1 ship. We could conquer this entire system with a maintenance crew." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Lisa Park stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Alpha. The orbital platform had been humanity's most advanced military installation. Until 3 hours ago, when every long-range sensor had suddenly lit up with contact alerts. "Talk to me, people," she said to her staff. "What exactly are we looking at?" Communications Officer Ben Walsh worked frantically at his console. "Admiral, we've been sending standard first contact protocols on all frequencies for the past 2 hours. Radio, microwave, laser, even old-fashioned Morse code. No response." "They're definitely there, though," Park asked. "Yes, ma'am. The gravitational displacement is unmistakable. Something very large is sitting just outside lunar orbit. Mass readings suggest a vessel at least 10 times bigger than anything we've ever built." Chief Science Officer Dr. Maria Lopez looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. The power output alone suggests technology centuries ahead of our current capabilities." Admiral Park had spent 30 years in the military. She had commanded ships in 3 different conflicts and earned her position through skill and determination. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. "Options," she asked her senior staff. "We could try approaching them with one of our shuttles," suggested Commander Bill Tucker. "Show peaceful intentions. Or we could wait and see what they do next," added Colonel Janet Miller. "No point in provoking a potentially hostile alien species with superior technology." Park nodded slowly, continued transmitting on all frequencies. "If they wanted to communicate, they would have responded by now. But maybe they're just being cautious." She was wrong. Aboard the Stellar Dominance, the humans' attempts at communication were being monitored and dismissed with growing amusement. "Captain, the local primitives are broadcasting electromagnetic signals at us," reported Communications Specialist Wechter. "Simple binary codes and mathematical sequences. Very basic." "Are they trying to communicate?" Korthovel asked. "Appears so, sir. They seem to think we don't understand their crude transmission methods." The captain waved one of his hands dismissively. "Ignore them. We are here to observe and catalog, not to waste time chatting with primitives. Continue the planetary scan." On Earth, President Susan Davis had been awakened at 4 in the morning by a call from the Pentagon. Now she sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and her top advisors. Everyone looked tired and worried. Make sure I understand this correctly," she said to General Rick Stone. "We have a massive alien spacecraft sitting in our backyard, and they're completely ignoring our attempts to talk to them. That's correct, Madam President, Stone replied. All attempts at communication have been unsuccessful. They're scanning us, but showing no interest in dialogue. What are they scanning for? Known. Our best guess is that they're taking inventory of our military assets and natural resources. President Davis felt a chill run down her spine. Throughout human history, when a more advanced civilization encountered a less advanced one, the results were rarely good for the primitive society. What are our options if this goes bad? General Stone exchanged glances with the other military leaders. Honestly, ma'am, if they're hostile and their technology is as advanced as it appears, conventional warfare would be suicide. Our nuclear arsenal might damage them, but we'd be fighting with Stone Age weapons against Space Age technology. What do we do? Colonel Mary Ellis, head of Special Operations Command, leaned forward. We prepare for asymmetric warfare, madam. President. Can't match their technology, but we can make invasion and occupation extremely costly for them. Explain. Every successful resistance movement in history has used the same basic principles. Make the enemy pay a high price for every mile of territory. Force them to commit more resources than the conquest is worth. Use knowledge of local terrain and conditions to offset technological disadvantages. President Davis nodded. In other words, we make them regret starting a fight with us. Exactly. Back in space, Captain Korthoval was reviewing the scan results with satisfaction. Earth's military forces posed no meaningful threat to his ship. Their most powerful weapons would barely scratch his hull. Their fastest aircraft couldn't catch his slowest shuttlecraft. Begin Phase 2 of the survey, he ordered. I want detailed geological and biological scans. The Council will want to know about natural resources and potential slave populations. Slave populations, sir? Asked his first officer. Of course. Once we claim this system for the Empire, the local creatures will need to be put to useful work. They seem strong enough for basic labor, and there are billions of them. The stellar dominance extended more sophisticated sensors toward Earth. This time, it penetrated deep beneath the surface, mapping mineral deposits and underground formations. They also began detailed biological scans of major population centers. What they found surprised them. Humans were physically stronger than most intelligent species the Valerians had encountered. Their bone density was unusually high. Their muscle mass exceeded what should be necessary for creatures of their size. Most interesting, their cardiovascular systems seemed designed for extreme physical stress. Curious, muttered Science Officer Telmar as she studied the biological data. These creatures appear to be built for conflict. Look at these Phytor flight response systems. Their bodies can triple their strength output in emergency situations. Probably an adaptation to their violent culture, suggested another officer. Constant warfare would select for physical prowess. Captain Korthovel wasn't interested in biological details. How long until the survey is complete? 6 more hours, Captain. Excellent.
Ow.
Signal the fleet to begin the approach.
Tell them this conquest will be over before dinner?
On Earth, the waiting was becoming unbearable. Admiral Park paced the command deck of Defense Station Alpha like a caged animal. Every instinct told her that something bad was about to happen. Admiral called sensor operator Tim Roberts. I'm reading new energy signatures. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Park rushed to his station. Display showed dozens of new contacts appearing throughout the solar system. Each one was as large as the first ship, and they were moving toward Earth in a classic military formation. Red alert, she announced. All stations, prepare for hostile contact. Notify Earth Command that we are about to be invaded. The message flashed around the globe in seconds. Military bases went to maximum alert. Government leaders were rushed to secure bunkers. Families gathered around television sets to watch news. Broadcasts that tried to explain what was happening, but in hidden bunkers deep beneath mountains and deserts. Other preparations were taking place. The Valerian invasion fleet arrived like silver death from the stars. 47 ships of various sizes dropped out of hyperspace around Earth in perfect formation. The smallest vessels were still larger than Earth's biggest aircraft carriers. The largest dreadnoughts stretched for miles, their crystal hulls reflecting sunlight and rainbow patterns. Captain, Korthovel stood on the bridge of the stellar dominance, watching Earth grow larger on his display screens. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful and innocent. Soon it would belong to the Valerian Empire, just another conquered world in their vast collection. "All ships report ready for combat operations," announced his tactical officer. "Ground. Assault units are prepared for deployment." "Excellent," Korthovel replied. "Begin orbital bombardment of their major military installations. Focus on their command centers and communication networks. We want to break their ability to coordinate resistance." The first plasma beams lanced down from space, like fingers of the gods. They struck with the power of small suns, turning concrete and steel into clouds of superheated gas. The Pentagon and Washington simply vanished in a ball of white fire. Similar strikes hit military bases around the world. Admiral Lisa Bork watched in horror from Defense Station Alpha as the orbital bombardment began. One moment she was looking at a display showing military installations across North America. The next moment, half of them had simply disappeared. "They're targeting our command structure," she said to her staff. "They want to cut off our ability to fight back." Communications Officer Ben Walsh looked up from his console with panic in his eyes. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Pacific Fleet Command, European Defense Network, and Asian Military Coordination Center. The aliens are systematically destroying our entire command structure." Park felt sick to her stomach, but she forced herself to stay calm. Switch to backup communication protocols. Alert all surviving units to implement Operation Blackout immediately. Operation Blackout had been developed during the Cold War as a way to maintain military coordination if enemy action destroyed normal command structures. Instead of relying on centralized control, individual units would operate independently using predetermined objectives and tactics. On the surface, the bombardment continued for 6 hours. New York City erupted in flames as plasma strikes hit Manhattan. London's financial district became a crater of melted stone. Tokyo Bay boiled as energy beams superheated the water. Moscow's Red Square turned into a field of glass. Millions of people died in those first hours. But something strange happened that the aliens had not expected. Instead of panicking and surrendering, the surviving humans became angry. Very angry. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Murphy crouched in what had been downtown Chicago. The skyscrapers around him were twisted metal sculptures. Their windows melted and their frames bent into impossible shapes. His Marines had taken shelter in the underground tunnel system that connected the city's buildings. "Sir, we just lost contact with Central Command," reported Sergeant Amy Rodriguez. Her face was streaked with dirt and her uniform was torn, but her eyes burned with determination. "Then we follow standing orders," Murphy replied. "We make them pay for every block, every building, every room. Pass the word to all units. The gloves are off." From hidden bunkers beneath the Rocky Mountains, what remained of Earth's leadership coordinated the response. President Susan Davis had been evacuated to a secure facility 2 miles underground. General Rick Stone stood beside her, studying reports that came in from around the world. "Status report," Davis requested. "We've lost most of our major cities, and approximately 60% of our military infrastructure," Stone reported. "But our distributed command system is holding. Regional commanders are implementing resistance protocols." "How many casualties?" Stone's face was grim. "Preliminary estimates suggest between 50 and 70 million dead in the first wave." Davis closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were filled with cold fury. "General, I'm authorizing Protocol Deathworld. Use every weapon, every tactic, every dirty trick we've ever developed. These aliens want a war. Let's give them one they'll never forget." Protocol Deathworld was humanity's most classified military doctrine. It had been developed by studying every successful resistance movement in human history, from ancient guerrilla campaigns to modern insurgencies. The basic principle was simple: make the enemy's victory so costly that they would prefer to leave than continue fighting. The Valerian ground forces began landing. 12 hours after the orbital bombardment ended, Captain Teshkor led the first wave, commanding 500 elite shock troops. They descended in sleek dropships that landed in what had been Central Park in New York City. Secure the area. Teshkor ordered his troops, intelligence indicates. This was a major population center. We should encounter minimal resistance from the surviving primitives. The Valerian soldiers spread out through the ruined park. Their energy weapons could punch through tank armor, and their personal shields could stop most human weapons. They expected to face terrified survivors hiding in the rubble. Instead, they found hell. The first shot came from a sniper hidden in the ruins of a skyscraper half a mile away. Oh, the kinetic round punched through a Valerian's energy shield like it was made of paper. The alien soldier collapsed, blue blood spreading across the ground. "Contact," Teshkor shouted. "Return fire!" But there was nothing to shoot at. The sniper had vanished back into the ruins before the aliens could even locate the source of the shot. This was former Marine sniper Dan Kelly, using skills learned in 3 different wars to turn the urban landscape into a hunting ground. More shots rang out from different directions. Valerian soldiers began falling as human marksmen picked them off from concealed positions. The aliens' energy weapons were powerful, but they needed a target to hit. "Thermal scanning shows no large groups of enemies," reported a Valerian sensor operator, "but we're taking fire from multiple locations." "Is that possible?" Teshkor demanded. "Our intelligence said these creatures were primitive. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. They had learned to use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and turn every environment into a weapon." In the sewers beneath the city, Marine Captain Lisa Brooks led a team of combat engineers. They moved through tunnels that the aliens didn't even know existed, placing explosives at key locations. When the Valerians tried to advance down certain streets, entire blocks would collapse into carefully prepared sinkholes. "Remember," Brooks told her team, "we're not trying to win pitched battles. We're trying to make them afraid to leave their ships." The aliens found that every building could hide an enemy. Every pile of rubble might conceal a bomb. Every shadow could hide a sniper. Humans used mirrors to reflect the aliens' energy beams back at them. They used the city's own infrastructure as weapons, flooding tunnels to trap enemy troops or cutting power lines to create electrical hazards. Captain. Teshkor had expected to secure the landing zone within 2 hours. Instead, he found himself fighting a nightmare battle against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. His casualties were mounting, but he had no clear targets to strike back at. "Request immediate reinforcement," he transmitted to the fleet. "The enemy resistance is much stronger than anticipated."
Back on the stellar dominance?
Captain Korthavel received similar requests from landing zones around the globe. Every ground commander was reporting unexpected casualties and fierce resistance. "How is this possible?" he asked his tactical staff. "Our weapons are superior in every way." "Captain, the humans appear to be using what they call guerrilla warfare," explained Intelligence Officer McTal. "Instead of fighting our strengths, they are exploiting our weaknesses." "What weaknesses?" "We have better technology, better weapons, better armor." "Yes, sir. But they know their own planet better than we do. They understand how to use their environment as a weapon, and they seem willing to take casualties that would break most civilized species." Captain Korthavel studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. Red markers showed where his forces were taking fire. The pattern made no sense according to standard military doctrine. Humans weren't trying to hold territory or protect strategic locations. They were simply making it dangerous for Valerian forces to exist anywhere on the planet, in the Amazon rainforest. Valerian troops found themselves lost in a green maze where every tree could hide a human sniper. In the Sahara Desert, they discovered that humans could survive in conditions that would kill most alien species. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, they learned that humans had been fighting winter itself for thousands of years. Everywhere the aliens landed, they found the same thing. Humans who refused to surrender, who knew how to turn their own world into a weapon, and who seemed to become more dangerous the more desperate their situation became. On Earth, word spread through the resistance networks. The aliens could destroy cities from space, but they couldn't fight an entire planet full of humans who had learned to survive in the most hostile environments imaginable. The invasion that was supposed to end in hours had become a grinding war of attrition. 6 months had passed since the Valerian invasion began. What Captain Corthavel had promised would be a quick conquest had become a nightmare that haunted his dreams. Every day brought new reports of casualties, failed missions, and human tactics. That defied all military logic. The bridge of the stellar dominance no longer sparkled with confident energy. Stress cracks had appeared in Corthavel's crystalline skin, and his forearms moved with nervous twitches instead of smooth grace. His crew worked quietly at their stations, afraid to speak unless directly addressed. "Status report," he commanded, dreading the answer. Tactical Officer Zechtel consulted his displays with obvious reluctance. "Sir, we currently control approximately 30% of the planet's major population centers. However, human resistance forces continue to operate freely in all occupied territories." "What do you mean they operate freely? You have troops on the ground? You have orbital support? How can primitives with crude weapons continue to resist?" "Captain, they don't fight like any enemy we've encountered before. They appear when we least expect them, strike hard, then vanish before we can respond. Yesterday, a unit of our finest soldiers was ambushed in what used to be called Detroit. The humans used the city's abandoned buildings like a maze, peering from sewers and basement tunnels we didn't even know existed." Corthavel slammed one of his fists on his command console. "These creatures are supposed to be primitive. How are they defeating technology that conquered 47 star systems?" On Earth, the resistance had evolved into something the aliens could never have imagined. In the ruins of what had been Chicago, Lieutenant Colonel Jake Murphy stood before a group of fighters who bore little resemblance to the soldiers they had once been. Their uniforms were patched with alien materials. Their weapons were a mixture of human engineering and captured Valerian technology. "Listen up," Murphy told his assembled troops. "Intelligence reports that the aliens are pulling back from the western sectors. They're consolidating their forces around the major spaceports." Sergeant Amy Rodriguez raised her hand. "Sir, are they preparing to retreat? Unknown? Could be a tactical withdrawal, could be preparation for a larger offensive.
Either way.
We keep doing what we've been doing. We make every day on Earth cost them more than they can afford." The Resistance had learned to adapt alien technology in ways that amazed even human scientists. Dr. Alex Carter worked from a hidden laboratory built inside an abandoned subway tunnel in New York. Around him, teams of engineers and technicians reverse-engineered captured Valerian equipment. "The plasma rifles are actually quite simple once you understand the basic principles," Carter explained to a group of military commanders. "We've been able to modify them to use our own power sources. More importantly, we've figured out how to disrupt their energy shields using modified EMPs." Colonel Mary Ellis studied the modified weapons with professional interest. "How many can you produce?" "With our current resources, about 50 units per week. But the real breakthrough is this." Carter held up a small device that looked like a cross between a hand grenade and a computer chip. "Alien communication disruptor. When activated, it jams their tactical networks for about 30 minutes. Ellis smiled grimly. 30 minutes is long enough to cause a lot of trouble. In the frozen wilderness of Alaska, Marine Captain Lisa Brooks had turned the harsh environment into humanity's greatest ally. Her fighters moved through the snow like Arctic wolves, striking Valerian patrols and vanishing into blizzards that would kill most alien species. "The cold is our friend," she told her troops as they prepared for another raid. "These aliens come from warm worlds with stable climates. They don't understand how to fight in conditions that change every hour. The Valerians had tried to adapt to Earth's extreme weather, but their technology was designed for controlled environments. Their energy weapons drained power faster in cold conditions. Their vehicles struggled with ice and snow. Most importantly, their soldiers couldn't function effectively when the temperature dropped below freezing." Brooks led her team across a frozen lake, toward a Valerian supply depot. The aliens had chosen the location because it seemed impossible to attack across open ice. They hadn't considered that humans had been crossing frozen water for thousands of years. Member Brooks whispered to her fighters, "Hit the power generators first. Without energy, Their weapons are just expensive clubs. The attack came at dawn, when the alien sentries were least alert. Human fighters emerged from snowdrifts where they had been hiding for hours, their bodies adapted to cold that would have killed most civilized species. The depot fell within minutes, and the humans vanished back into the wilderness before reinforcements could arrive. Captain Teshkor had lost more than half his original force in the 6 months since landing. The survivors were jumpy, exhausted, and beginning to question whether this conquest was worth the cost. He stood in what had been Times Square, now a crater surrounded by twisted metal and broken glass. "Sir, we've got movement in Sector 7, reported one of his scouts. Thermal signatures suggest a large group of humans. How large? At least 200, sir. They appear to be civilians." Teshkor felt a moment of relief. Finally, something his forces could handle. "Deploy squads 3 and 4. Secure the civilians for processing." But when his troops reached Sector 7, they found empty buildings and no sign of human presence. The thermal signatures had been fake, created by resistance fighters using captured alien technology to generate heat sources, while the Valerian troops investigated the false target. Human commandos struck their base camp from the opposite direction. This was the pattern that had driven the aliens to the edge of madness. Every time they thought they had found an easy target, it turned out to be a trap. Every time they tried to predict human behavior, the resistance did something completely unexpected. In the depths of space, Captain John Hayes commanded what remained of Earth's fleet from the bridge of the heavy cruiser Intrepid. The ship showed the scars of 6 months of hit-and-run attacks against the Valerian fleet. Burn marks covered the hull, and several sections had been patched with salvaged alien materials. "Status report," Hayes requested from his tactical officer. "Sir, we've got 3 Valerian destroyers moving to intercept the supply convoy near Jupiter. They're following the same patrol pattern they've used for the past 2 weeks." Hayes smiled. Predictability was a weakness humans had learned to exploit. "All ships, implement attack pattern Delta. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to make them waste resources chasing shadows." The human fleet had learned to fight like pirates, striking fast and running before the enemy could bring superior firepower to bear. They couldn't win direct battles. They could make every Valerian victory cost more than it was worth. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were being held to discuss the crisis on Earth. Ambassador Zethkar stood before his fellow council members, his once proud bearing now bent with shame and frustration. "How could this have happened?" demanded High Counselor. "Mirandi, you assured us this would be a simple conquest." "The humans are not what they appeared to be," Zethkar admitted. "Their technology may be primitive, but their fighting spirit is unlike anything we've encountered. They refuse to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds." General Korthak studied the tactical reports with professional interest. "Deathworlders fight like their planet taught them. Look at these casualty ratios. They accept losses that would break the will of any civilized species." "What do you recommend?" asked Admiral Ziphos. "Withdrawal," Korthak replied without hesitation. "This conquest is costing us more than any star system is worth. The humans have turned their entire planet into a weapon, and they know how to use it better than we know how to counter it." Council chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of galactic expansion, no member species had ever recommended retreat from a primitive world. Back on Earth, the humans were preparing for what they hoped would be the final phase of the war. They had learned that their enemies could be defeated not through superior technology, but through superior determination and the willingness to fight on terms that favored the defender. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that would change everything. Never underestimate a species that evolved by surviving on a world that spent billions of years trying to kill them. 1 year after the invasion began, Captain Korthavel stood alone on the observation deck of the Stellar Dominance. The blue and green planet below no longer looked peaceful to him. Every continent was scarred with the marks of war. More disturbing was what he couldn't see. Human resistance forces moved like ghosts through territories his forces supposedly controlled. His communication console chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. Korthovel dreaded these calls, but he had no choice but to answer. "Captain, Corthavel came the stern voice of High Counselor Mirandi. The Council demands an immediate status report. How much longer will this conquest require? Corthavel's stress cracks had deepened over the past months. His once proud bearing was broken. High Counselor, I must request permission to withdraw all forces from the Earth system. Silence filled the communication channel. When Mirandi spoke, again her voice carried shock and disbelief. Withdraw? It's from a single primitive world? Explain yourself immediately. High Counselor, in 12 months of occupation, we have lost 60% of our ground forces and 30% of our fleet. The humans continue to resist with increasing effectiveness. They have reverse-engineered our technology and learned to use their planet's environment as a weapon against us. These are primitives with chemical rockets, Mirandi protested. How can they possibly threaten ships that conquered half the galaxy? Corthavel closed his eyes, remembering the countless battles that had gone wrong. They don't fight like civilized beings. They sacrifice themselves to destroy our equipment. They hide in places our sensors cannot detect. They turn every building, every forest, every mountain into a fortress. Most disturbing, they seem to become more dangerous the more desperate. Their situation becomes... On Earth, President Susan Davis stood in the rebuilt White House Situation Room. The original building had been destroyed in the first day of bombardment. But humans had learned to build new structures underground, hidden from orbital sensors. General Stone, what's our current status? She asked. General Rick Stone looked tired, but satisfied. Madam President, our resistance networks are operating at full capacity across all continents. Alien forces have withdrawn from 70% of the territories they initially occupied. More importantly, we've intercepted communications, suggesting serious disagreement within their command structure. Are they preparing to leave? Intelligence suggests it's possible, but we should assume they'll try one more major offensive before. Admitting defeat? Davis nodded. The past year had changed her, just as it had changed all of humanity. The species that had once fought wars over oil and territory had united against a common enemy. Every human on Earth now understood that they were part of something larger than themselves. In the ruins of London, Dr. Alex Carter had achieved breakthroughs that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. His underground laboratory now produced weapons and equipment that combined human ingenuity with alien technology in ways the original designers never intended. The alien power cores are remarkably adaptable, he explained to a group of military engineers. We've managed to integrate them with our own electronics to create hybrid systems that outperform either technology alone. Colonel Mary Ellis examined the latest prototypes. These pulse rifles have better range and accuracy than the original alien weapons. That's because we understand something the aliens don't, Carter replied. Human engineering has always been about making things work in harsh conditions. We build equipment that can function when everything goes wrong. Alien technology assumes controlled environments and perfect conditions. The Resistance had indeed learned to combine human adaptability with alien technology. In workshops hidden across the globe, human mechanics and engineers worked miracles of improvisation. They built vehicles that could operate in Earth's extreme weather. They created weapons that could function even when damaged. Most importantly, they developed technology that could be manufactured using Earth's existing industrial base. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Murphy led his forces through the streets of Chicago for what he hoped would be the final battle in his sector. His troops moved with the confidence of veterans who had learned to fight against impossible odds and win. Intelligence reports alien forces are preparing to evacuate their main base, he told his squad leaders. This is our chance to hit them when they're vulnerable. The attack came at dawn, but this time the humans fought differently. Instead of hit-and-run tactics, they pressed forward in coordinated waves. They had learned the aliens' weaknesses and were ready to exploit them fully. The Valerian defenders found themselves facing enemies who seemed immune to fear. Human soldiers advanced through plasma fire that would have broken most species. When their weapons jammed, they improvised. When their equipment failed, they adapted. When their positions became untenable, they found new ways to attack. Captain Teschker watched his defense lines crumble with growing horror. How are they coordinating so effectively? We've jammed all their communication frequencies. His aide pointed to groups of humans who seemed to be moving with perfect coordination, despite having no visible means of communication. Sir, they appear to be using prearranged signals and tactics, if planned for communication failure. This was the final lesson the aliens learned about humans. They were a species that planned for disaster and trained to function when everything went wrong. Earth's harsh environment had taught them to survive. When systems failed, and to improvise solutions from whatever materials were available in space, Captain John Hayes commanded the final assault on the alien fleet. The human ships were still outgunned and outnumbered, but they fought with a desperation that the aliens couldn't match. All ships, focus fire on their command vessel, Hayes ordered. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to convince them that staying here costs more than leaving. The Intrepid shuddered under alien fire, but Hayes held his course. Around him, other human ships pressed their attacks with suicidal courage. They rammed alien vessels. When their weapons failed, they used their own ships as weapons when conventional tactics weren't enough. Aboard the Stellar Dominance, Captain Corthavel watched his fleet take damage from enemies who should have been crushed months ago. But the humans kept coming, kept finding new ways to hurt his forces. Sir, the Council is demanding another status report, his communications officer announced. Corthavel activated the channel. High Counselor, I am implementing immediate withdrawal of all forces from the Earth system. Captain, you will stand and fight, Mirandi commanded. The honor of the Empire demands it, High Counselor. With respect, the Empire's honor will not resurrect our dead crews or rebuild our destroyed ships. These humans have turned their entire world into a weapon, and they know how to use it better than we know how to counter it. The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the ship. Human fighters had somehow penetrated their defensive perimeter and were attacking the Stellar Dominance directly. How did they get through our shields? Corthavel demanded.
Yes, sir.
They appear to be using a combination of stealth technology and kamikaze tactics. They're willing to sacrifice their pilots to damage our ship. Corthavel made his decision. Signal the fleet. Full withdrawal to the outer system. We leave immediately. Across the galaxy, word of the Valerian retreat spread through the Galactic Council chambers like wildfire. For the first time in recorded history, an advanced civilization had been forced to retreat from a primitive world. Ambassador Zethkar stood before the assembled council, his career in ruins, but his respect for humanity grudgingly genuine. We underestimated them completely. They don't fight to win territory or resources. They fight to survive, and their entire evolutionary history has been one of overcoming impossible odds. General Korthak studied the tactical reports with professional admiration. These Deathworlders have redefined what it means to resist conquest. They've shown that technology alone doesn't determine victory. Will, determination, and the ability to adapt can overcome even superior firepower. On Earth, President Davis addressed not just her own people but the entire galaxy through captured alien communication networks. The message was broadcast on frequencies that reached every civilized world. We did not seek this war, she began, but when it came to our doorstep, we chose to fight rather than surrender. Earth stands ready to defend itself and to assist any other species that values freedom over subjugation. We are the children of a world that made us strong through adversity. We offer friendship to those who come in peace, but we promise resistance to those who come as conquerors. The message echoed across the galaxy, and civilizations that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew they existed. The age of human expansion. Into the stars had begun, and the galaxy would never underestimate the species from the small blue world again. Humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe. More importantly, the universe had learned that humanity was not to be taken lightly.